Something that I've been a point I've been trying to make for quite a number of years ago, just my opinion, is over the issue of human rights. And the reason is this, because these are your human rights at the point of initiation, i.e. it's a blank page, you don't have any. Now, you compare and contrast that with the idea of unalienable God-given rights, because it's quite a different thing. So if we look at human rights here, let's give a few: the right to life, the right to freedom of speech, the right to freedom of assembly, the right to protest, and so on. The problem with this is, because it begins with a blank page, of course, these rights can disappear again at the whim of whomever is in charge. So if we compare that with the idea of unalienable God-given rights, this basically sums up the position: thou shalt not. So in other words, you are unlimited, you have unlimited rights, your rights are presumed, they are untouchable, they are only limited by thou shalt not. Now, how does this work with British common law? Well, in fact, the case law is Entick versus Carrington, 1675, which confirms the principle that the individual may do anything but that which is forbidden by law. So the individual has unlimited rights except where the law says they can't do X, Y, or Z. And we compare that with the situation with the state. The state may do nothing except that which is permitted by law. Now, what we're seeing increasingly over the last few years is the state is taking on the position of the individual and assuming that it has the right to do anything, including limiting your human rights. So this is a situation under the British common law system and all common law countries. Humans are presumed to have unlimited, well, not unlimited, but unalienable God-given rights limited by law. Now, so where does that leave us? This leaves us in the position, well, let's look at this particular document, legislating for the relaxation of the lockdown. Over the last lot of years, we've seen our God-given rights being replaced with the idea of human rights. The presumption then has been taken away that our rights come from some other source than the government. And now we have this type of thing. Now, this is by Sir Stephen Laws. Stephen Laws was basically the man who wrote the legislation for the government's chief counsel between 2010 and 2016. And this is what he's saying in this document that he's written for Policy Exchange. First of all, a situation of this sort involves a need, this is COVID-19, involves a need for individuals to sacrifice some of their freedoms and liberties, if only because their individual interest in the maintenance and stability of the society to which they belong needs to be given the highest priority. So what he's saying is the needs of the state trump the needs of the individual. And then he goes on to say this: the government should look again at a derogation from the ECHR, that's the European Convention on Human Rights, until the end of the crisis, although that may involve more risk rather than less. And David, this seems to be one of the top legal minds in the country, basically making my point for me that human rights are dangerous because you start from a blank page. There is an assumption that there is no higher power in the universe than another human being, which means that society confers that power onto a human being who is supposed to be equal to us all under the law, but in fact put themselves above us by deciding what our rights are and what our rights aren't. So if we're discussing dangerous situations on this program, we seem to have hit another one here.
Absolutely, and we're seeing the reversal of truth constantly. Black becomes white. A system of law to prevent expropriation of the goods of the weak by the mighty becomes a means of stealing those same goods. And also, there is a sense here that a society that does not believe in God-given inalienable rights ultimately will not be able to defend liberty. It will always ultimately fall for the fear and yield to the ever mighty state. And where does it end up? It ends up where Benito Mussolini pointed as the destination. Everything within the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state. That's where we're heading.
And now just one other point that I want to make on this, because of course a lot of the sort of commentary on this suggests that really these ancient rights are just outdated and we need to bring things up to date, and that modern human rights are a much better way to do things. You know, in the graphic that I showed there, thou shalt not, of course, that brings us back to the Ten Commandments. Now, the point here is that law which has lasted longer is better, because in other words, more and more generations of juries have thought that that was good law. So this is contrary to the current position that we should throw away all this ancient legislation because it's really of no relevance. But when it comes to the idea of unalienable rights, we're not talking about, you know, the 800 years or so of the British Constitution. We're talking about several thousand years of a principle which has gone through society, a principle that seems to have never really got to grip, never really gripped in Europe, but certainly gripped here. And David, it's been around for a very long time, and we shouldn't be throwing it away so quickly.
It did not, and this is going to be the subject of a series of articles in the column just very shortly on the common law and what it is and what it means to have the love of that law in your heart.
Okay, now let's just quickly move on to this, because last week there was quite an amazing discussion thread appeared on GitHub, which is where Neil Ferguson from Imperial College put the source code for the application that he used to run his computer models. And this was a spectacular thread on GitHub where quite a number of coders, technology people were making some pretty derogatory comments about the quality of Neil Ferguson's code. And David, lockdown skeptics here covering this.
Indeed they are. And this is vital, because this code, remember, is the thing that more than any other single piece of work propelled the country down the lockdown, propelled, in fact, the whole West down the route of confining us all to our homes and house arrest. Now, the code assessment here is damning in the extreme. They say, first of all, the code, it isn't the code that Ferguson ran to produce the famous Report 9, but a heavily modified derivative of it after having been upgraded for only a month by a team from Microsoft and others.
Sorry, hold on 1 second. So this isn't even the code he was running. This is the better version of the code that others have come in to try to clean it up?
This is right, yes. This revised code base is split into multiple files for legibility and is written in C++, in modern language, whereas the original program was, quote, a single 15,000 line file that has been worked on for a decade. And he comments, this is considered extremely poor practice. So he's then saying, well, we're trying to get the actual original code, but we think we'll have to go to court to get that. So they then go in and look at several other aspects. Among the most concerning is non-deterministic outputs. He says, due to bugs, the code can produce very different results given identical inputs. And they, that's Imperial College, routinely act as if this is unimportant. The problem makes the code unusable for scientific purposes, given that a key part of the scientific method, the ability to replicate results. Without replication, the findings might not be real at all, as the field of psychology has been finding out to its cost. Even if the original code were released, it's apparent that the same numbers in code 9, in report 9, might not come out of it. Non-deterministic outputs may take some explanation. It's not something previously floated as a possibility. The documentation says the model is stochastic. Multiple runs with different seeds should be undertaken to see average behavior. Stochastic is just a scientific word for random. Now, Peter Hitchens picked up on this, and he took the radical step of opening the Oxford English Dictionary to look up what stochastic means. And lo and behold, stochastic says, well, it's to aim at a mark or guess pertaining to conjecture. So that's the nature of the software that's driving this. And it was the full report from Lockdown Skeptics goes into a number of examples of Edinburgh University trying to use the software and being unable to get consistent results, variations by 80,000 deaths, for example. and Imperial College basically saying, well, it's meant to do that, just run it multiple times and take an average. Even though there's other cases of Imperial College seeing this as a bug and trying to sort it. In conclusion, they say, all papers based on this code should be retracted immediately. So that would take the government's case for lockdown out completely. Imperial's modelling efforts should be reset with a new team that isn't under Professor Ferguson, and which has a commitment to replicatable results with published code from day one. And he goes on a personal level, I go further and suggest that all academic epidemiology be defunded. This sort of work is best done by the insurance sector. Insurers employ modelers and data scientists, but also employ managers whose job it is to decide whether a model is accurate enough for real world usage, and professional software engineers to ensure model software is properly tested, understandable, and so on. Academic efforts don't have these people, and the results speak for themselves. He describes it as hobbyist level software, an unreliable mess.
Right, and well, let's move straight on now to a little tweet thread, David. Now, we're going to apologise for the language on the screen, but we thought best that people were able to see what's going on here. Just bring us through this.
Yes, this was over the weekend. It was very strange. Hackney Police tweeted out that they're fighting a losing battle in the parks today. Literally hundreds of people sitting, having pizza, beers, and wine. Oh, the horror! As always, a big thank you to those who are observing the guidelines. And we'll see this repeated in the video we'll show in extra time. Now, there's this account came up, and he was basically suggesting that dogs and horses and batons be used to remove the people from the parks. So I replied that the job of the police is to protect those people, not to attack them. And in response to that, there was another swear-ridden quote, basically saying the people out having a picnic are potentially killing people and they deserve everything they get. This was an extremely strange tweet. I have never seen anything like this on Twitter before in my life. It had only 2 retweets. It had 9 replies, all of which supported my position that the police should be protecting people, but an incredible 451 likes. So 451 people liked the idea of the police beating up people in parks, and the likes kept coming at a kind of regular rate. And I was having a look at some of the accounts that they were coming from, and I've got one example here. 176 people with 85 followers. Most of them were like this. These accounts are set up. They usually had a football theme because it's easy to get followers if you have an affiliation with a football club. They build up. They follow a couple hundred people. They get between 30 and 80 followers, so the account looks reasonably legit. And they're all like that. 450 of them liking that nothing of a tweet. It was the strangest thing I'd ever seen on Twitter. Would you, Mike, have any speculation as to what I might have been encountering there?
Well, in the chat box, they're already speculating that you were on the receiving end of some 77th Brigade activity.
Could it be that that's the gallant 77th Brigade doing their stuff?
David, to cut in, they are not paying the 77 Brigade salaries and the Google salaries, because Google and 77 Brigade are integrated. They're not paying those salaries for the people to sit there doing nothing. And we've already been told they're not just monitoring social media, they are actively involved in getting amongst it and changing the way people think and behave. And that includes, of course, coercion. If the government is using coercion, we can be sure that 77 Brigade is using it. The British Army is now brought into this conspiracy against the British people. If you're listening from overseas, 2020, we are describing a military supported dictatorship operating, not installing itself, but operating itself in the UK. 77 Brigade. I think we can put money on it.
If that's 77th Brigade, right, and I think it is legitimate to think that it probably is, then 77th Brigade are now going on social media and advocating that the police should use violence against peaceful people. And if that's the case, that is a new low.
Well, I'll just add to that information that we've had, which we can't substantiate, but it was very interesting information, suggested that 77 Brigade was already trying tricks to threaten and warn off people. I think we're going to get further information about dirty tactics like that in the future, but we'll see.
Give me a baby, and I can make any kind of man.
So this was our warning back in 2011 about this French expert in brainwashing, and he's been working at the heart of the British government, except the British public not told. What's the result of this policy? Death. And here was the Mirror's article saying that between 7,500 and 17,500 elderly people have died as a result of this vicious applied behavioural psychology. Now, is Hancock the fool guy because he's the one taking the heat, and the people behind the scenes repurposing the government are the key ones? Let's ask the question. The Boris Johnson Conservative government is lying over the COVID-19 statistics. We know why, to create an agenda of fear. Why is that happening? Well, it's to enhance the effectiveness of applied behavioural psychology on the population and to bring in a repurposed society, economy, government and constitution. This is malfeasance in public office. That is a criminal offence. The killing of elderly people, many people would say, is purely murder. David, I'm going to stop because this is so outrageous, it's almost difficult to report.
It is, and it's been coming for a long time. It's fascinating that the column was covering this all those years ago, and we're now seeing the actual laying out of the process, or the fruition of the process of changing the way people think. Now, going a little bit further back in time, this in fact started back in the 20s with Edward Bernays, who invented propaganda and public relations. And I thought it'd be good to finish this section on a quote from him. He said in his piece Propaganda from 1928, "The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country." So there we have it. An invisible government is controlling us all right now.
Queen may never return to frontline duties. Monarch 94 could remain quarantined in Windsor indefinitely until a vaccine is found. This article is seeding in the public that we're not going to see the monarch again. It says she may appear on a video link or something, but look at how long she's going to be there until who? Bill Gates, until Mr. Gates' vaccine empire can get his flawed products out. And we know now that he's looking at trillions in profit.
Your own Health Minister, Nadine Dorries, had tweeted yesterday journalists should stop asking about an exit strategy. There is only one way we can exit full lockdown, and that is when we have a vaccine.
The people no longer have any authority. Linda Tyre, a cancer cure research scientist, has unlawfully been imprisoned in France for curing many individuals of life-threatening cancers. A common law court, consisting of 12 reasonable-minded men and women, issued a court order confirming her innocence and requiring her immediate and safe return. The government, Attorney General, Home Secretary and Foreign Secretary are paid servants of the people, and some are questioning their refusal to comply with this lawful order, saying this stance confirms that they believe they are superior to the people, the common law court and God.